So I want to teach you firsthand some of the tools I've included in the book No Ego that help to break projection. Now, a second way to use thinking inside the box is when you're trying to bring groups together and get them aligned around some single goals, and they continue to have either separate goals or conflict in what they're trying to create or between themselves as teams. Thinking inside the box can be very useful from changing the question of either or to and so this really is about the power of and. Now, in this example, I'm going to give you a real-time story. I was called by a hospital administrator, and she was very concerned that her physicians and her laboratory were doing a lot of conflicting around a new initiative in the lab, that the lab was working hard to save money and that the physicians were working hard to resist it. And she basically wanted me to go in there and strong arm the physicians, tell them it's a non-negotiable and be done with it. I didn't get the sense that the physicians were going to give up all that easily unless they were able to bypass ego that said that this was an attack on their license and move into a place where they really felt that they could add value both to their patients and to the lab. Let me tell you the situation. As I went into the room and I had lab leaders in the laboratory and I had physicians that were working in the clinic system in the same room. And I just wanted to listen with an open mind, and I just said, what is the issue? And the laboratory started off and they said, we are working hard to cut costs in the lab. And we have found some amazing ways to cut costs. For instance, having an open book and running a lab test only as it's ordered can be really expensive. We may mix up a batch of solution for one test, but it could also run 20 tests in that same solution. They were calling upon the physicians to order the tests as needed, but give them the latitude that they could do the tests as batched, still within the same day. Any important tests that were stacked would still get run, but they wanted to start batching these tests so that they would wait to run it at the most cost-effective time or fashion. Now, the physicians heard that and immediately got into projection. Laboratories now trying to practice medicine. They're now telling physicians when they can and can't run tests. Labs are supposed to just take orders and do what the physicians tell them. And so they were very much enemies. The lab was seeing the physicians as not concerned about costs and not team players. The physicians were seeing the lab as not understanding the role that they play in patient care. All of it was a bit of a mess. So I got up and used one of the tools that I've included in the book No Ego for you that you can use, called Thinking Inside the Box. The first thing I did was I got really clear on what the lab was trying to do. And the lab was trying to be more cost effective. And I just wrote that on the side of one chart, right? They were trying to be efficient, cost effective. The physicians were trying to make sure, if you boil it down to one word, that their patients had the access they needed and the time they needed to all of the rest of our services, including lab. Now, this will take the villain out of the picture, because when we project, there's always a villain. To break projection, one of the first things I do is normalize or neutralize what's going on here. I look to the physicians, I go, I love that you're caring about access for our patients, thank you. The lab, I love that you're working on being cost effective, another great effort, I appreciate that. What that does is it pits one against the other, it takes that away and just neutralizes and said these are both worthy goals. Now, what I know is that when we're seeing it only from the lens of what's important to us, that we will be short-sighted. So a first way to interrupt thinking and go beyond ego and get people thinking about greater things is I wanted to go bigger than both of these. Why are you doing this? What is the main reason? And when I asked the physicians, they said basically they wanted a great patient experience. When I asked the lab, it also came down to a great patient experience. If we're able to do things with less cost, that's important. And the physician said if we're able to do things as needed, that's important. Wow, they're both working towards the same thing. Here's the unifying goal, patient experience. We want a great one. Now, at the current moment, they were sitting around the table projecting on each other and projecting even on me, and I came to help. So to break projection, which is our primal instinct when we're uncomfortable to blame others or see others as the enemy, to break that, to bypass the ego, to get to that part of the brain that's full of innovation and collaboration, I had to call them up to greatness, raise the elevation here, and change the question, bypass it, get people self-reflecting. So what I did is I said, I appreciate you all want a great patient experience, and it seems like the way the lab wants to get there is through a contribution of cost effectiveness. Notice my language, contribution wants to get there. The way the physicians are working is to ensure access for the patients. Both great drivers of patient experience. You're all on the right track. Affirm, affirm, neutralize, neutralize, neutralize. Get everyone out of winning, losing, all of that ego mindset. And I said, but right now it seems like you're in a mindset where these are mutually exclusive. What I want to do, I made this visual, is take out or, call us to our higher self, and implement and. Now this is good facilitation, right? So tell me, in the name of patient experience, how you could be more cost effective and maintain access for your patients, especially those ones who would need an exception or would need to have something done not in a batch for these particular tests. Now, this is magical because here's why it worked. Instead of letting people project on each other where the ego cannot listen and manipulate and make up stories, we put it right here. Visually, we also kick you into a different part of your brain. We've made it conscious and intentional. And I've done some things right in front of you. I said, this is good, this is good, this is our goal, getting clearer. Leaders break projection by getting things conscious and intentional and adding clarity. When I've transformed right in front of you that we're going to move away from or and we're going to move into and, I now have posed a new question that will breed self-reflection. So as a group, I want you to spend the next half hour together answering the question, how you're going to drive a great patient experience, fostering cost effectiveness, and ensuring access. I'll be back. And I'm not kidding. This is how hard I worked as a leader. I left and got a cup of coffee. When I came back, I was shocked. I couldn't believe the solution they came up with. I would have never come up with this for them. This isn't my dilemma. It's theirs. Trust your people. Self-refer back to them, but give them a mental process that allows them to think in great ways. Now, most leaders want to give people the problem back and let them work it out, but they don't give them a good mental process to use to do that, and so it doesn't work out very well. When I came back, I was amazed. They came up with this idea that each physician would get 10 Monopoly dollars, I'm not kidding you, that they could spend any way they wanted to. Anytime they needed a lab test that was run, special or stat, that they worried would not be done soon enough if they left it to be batched, they literally, the lab was closed, everything's electronic right now in most of your organizations, they literally could spend one of their Monopoly bucks. And the lab agreed that that was fine because when they looked at their variance controls, they at least knew where they were going to be if everybody used everything and if everyone used nothing, and they could see progress, not perfection, as a first phase in this whole challenge for cost effectiveness. It would get us more good information. It would keep us moving forward. Now, here's how it worked out. The physicians told me later that what they feared, all these people needing things that they wouldn't be able to get, never really happened. That fear wasn't all that real. However, one partner in this particular practice did use a lot of Monopoly money. And what that exposed is that he was not practicing in a way that was evidence-based, and his peers came to him and said, rather than ordering a lab immediately, what about this, and this that you could do in the examination to get you more information before you just jumped into potentially overusing laboratories? It was amazing way to work. Now, what it left them with was a good mental process, because now whenever I would talk to a physician or a lab person, I could ask them, are you getting locked down in the either or situation, or now can you find the and? Because once I taught them this mental process, they were able to recall it even without the chart in front of them. I hope that you use this approach whenever you're in a meeting and people seem to have competing interests or competing goals. Most of the time people are trying to do the right thing. We just need to help them align with something greater, the highest goal ever, and come together in a way that changes the question for self-reflection from or to ands.